Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Jean Gallagher, founder of Discover Rising Tides, and welcome to show number 42, Discover Rising Tides, How the Outside Makes the Inside Better, where we explore the importance of the outdoors in maintaining life balance. Through this series, we'll be talking with women business owners to understand their journey. And so today we start with our Healthy Living, Happy Life segment with Denise Stegall, author, curator at Living Healthy List and Healthy Living Liaison. This month's topic, Denise will be talking about nourishing ourselves through our thoughts and feelings. Our second segment will be our main guest, Robin Decker, and closing us out will be our Rising Up segment with Lynn Schuessler-Williams, author, founder of Uprising, Unstoppable, Powerful Women Community, and producer of the Be More Conference. And so, Denise, let's get started.
All righty. Great to see you, Jean.
Good to see you too.
Excuse me. So last episode, we were talking about nourishing ourselves when it came to food. So today I'd like to kind of take a little bit of a different approach and look at nourishing ourselves through our thoughts and our feelings. So essentially, our thoughts and our feelings really do kind of rule our life. They are kind of a vital aspect of living a healthy, happy life. If our thoughts are negative, if we are struggling with positivity and gratitude, all of those things, it really can impact our physical body, but also our emotional and mental wellness as well. And of course, all of that equates to a healthy, happy lifestyle when done in the right way, when we're positive and thinking very positively in a good way.
And it's easy, as we were talking about food, food is difficult to do, but it's easier to track. And you can, when you are off course because that cupcake was yummy, right? Or the second cupcake shouldn't have happened, but it was equally as good as the first.
Absolutely.
When your feelings and your thoughts are off balance, sometimes you might not notice right away.
I think sometimes what happens is we kind of get into a cycle, we're busy, we're stressed, and we don't feel, our bodies kind of go numb. I equate this to, people who have sugar addiction, they eat so much sugar that, they don't even know what real food tastes like because they haven't had it in such a long time. And I feel that when it comes to our feelings and our emotions, we can get into such a negative spiral that we don't even recognize it as negative. We just recognize it as like, this is just normal. This is just how I am. And that's not necessarily the case.
Or it shouldn't be the case.
Shouldn't be the case.
So for me, I know that there are some triggers that I notice. And for me, it is, we've had the most gloomy, wet spring in California. And I am not complaining a bit because it's better than burning up in the summertime, literally burning up in the summer. However, I'm kind of done. But I also notice that my ability to maintain a more balanced thought process is less because I might not be outside so much, but I have to be careful to I had to figure out what are my triggers, how can I notice that spiral? And it's not easy to figure that out.
It's one of those things. It's simple, but it's not easy. It is something that we do need to become aware of. And when we start to get into this, like you're saying, it's kind of hard to get out of a negative mindset when, the weather's kind of gray and when we get busy doing things and kind of like stuck in the muck, as I always say. That's of course when we start going into that limiting belief and that, kind of negativity spiral. Negative self-talk, all of those things that just kind of keep piling on and on. And that's where I believe that we need to step back because it is hard to recognize, but you do at some point go, okay, this isn't quite me. This isn't how I usually am. At that point, when you do recognize it, is to step back and to maybe it's do some positive affirmations. It's to start thinking, what are the positive things that I can do here? Visualization, affirmations. One of the things that I work with my clients, interestingly enough, is positive intelligence and mental fitness, which Robin is going to talk about a little bit later. And essentially, what it is, it's just these, like I said, it's simple, not always easy, but it's just a simple reframing of our thought process. Can't do anything about the weather, right? So what is the reframe that you can kind of think instead? Well, like you just said a minute ago, actually, it's better than burning up in the summertime. So it's just a little bit of recognizing the negativity and kind of catching yourself and saying, okay, is this really a problem? Is this really a limiting belief? Is this real? I think sometimes that's another piece is, we start feeling negative and we get into this negative feelings and these emotions, and they're really not emotions that we really feel. We think we are, but the weather can just, that's one thing that can really just put a damper on everything. But it is something that when we are nourishing ourselves, even when we get stuck in those situations, when we're nourishing ourselves with gratitude, with positive affirmations, it takes the edge off of all of those. So you're less likely to get stuck in that negative mindset, that limiting belief, just by nourishing yourself on a regular basis.
I like the word reframe or reframing, the verb, because I think it's easy to assimilate into your thought process if your word is like, oh, I have to change my thoughts, but there doesn't seem, for me anyways, there doesn't seem to be emotion associated with the word, right? So if you're saying, well, I have to change what I'm thinking, well, now all of a sudden there's some self-judgment thoughts that can come up with just that when you're trying to fix your brain, but you're fixing your brain with a judgmental concept or thought. And so reframing seems less emotional. And for me, sometimes it is, I realize that I have set some undue expectations. And then I'm not meeting those undue expectations. Like, oh, I'm going to go outside on Thursday. Well, if I am, then I need to be in the right mindset that it's going to take a raincoat and some boots, but I can still go outside. But in my head, I'm like, oh, it's sunny. And then it's not sunny. And then all of a sudden the day is shot because you had those expectations of whatever that thing was that's not coming to fruition.
Absolutely. And the reframing, it really does help to make every day, every minute of every day, a more joyful one, a more positive one. And that's what's nourishing. And I would agree, looking at what the weather is, I'm a big fan of, okay, what's the weather going to do this week? And actually kind of picking the days that I know I can be outside. It's 15 degrees out there today. I'm not going outside. But I know by the weekend it's going to be warmer. So I think that's another one of those things that I think is really important is to plan ahead. Planning certain things really does help your your emotions. Like, oh, okay, well today, no, I can't get outside today. Darn, I even had my fireplace on. But hey, it's going to be in the 40s on Saturday. And so that's a great way to, kind of nourish yourself and say, okay, so that's not going to happen today, but it's going to happen in 3 days from now.
Correct.
So just again, the reframing and always thinking, what is that positive flip that you can make?
And what can I take care of today so I don't have to worry about it on the day that I'm going to do these fun things? So now all of a sudden you put yourself into purpose. So can we talk a little bit about gratitude? Because everybody talks about, have gratitude thoughts and all of this. I think it's damn hard. Is that okay to say? It's really hard.
Absolutely, especially when you're kind of in the middle of something and you're like in the middle of a negative situation, whether it's, arguing with your family or, you're at work and somebody's driving you crazy and you're just like, what am I grateful for here? What is the gratefulness here? So I do get that, it can be hard in the moment, but again, that's a little bit of a reframe.
That's true.
In that situation too. But what I have found the most helpful for me and for many of my clients is actually writing it down. At first, when somebody first said to me, oh, you should have a gratitude journal, I thought, oh gosh, this is so hokey. And then a friend of mine.
No wonder we're friends.
But it sounded like, oh, okay, this is a little
I had the same thought.
and this is a handful of years ago. And I have a friend who is, who actually has a gratitude journal. And so he sent it to me, and it's one of the simplest things that I started every morning when I get up and before I actually get out of bed. I just, for 5 minutes, just think about what I'm grateful for. And sometimes it's something ridiculous, like, I had a great night's sleep last night. I love this new pillow. I'm grateful for the pillow. It doesn't have to be this, like, I'm grateful for all of the big, amazing things. It's those little things that really add up. We say the same thing. I say this constantly when it comes to healthy lifestyle and healthy eating. Those small changes, those little incremental steps. And I think it's the same thing with gratitude. It's taking those little things that you may kind of ignore and just saying, I had a really crisp, amazing apple yesterday with my lunch. I was really grateful for that. And in the past, I probably just would have been like, oh yeah, it's a great apple. It was a good apple. No big deal. No more thought. But just to think about it in a little bit of a deeper way. And
how does that change things?
Say it again.
How does that change things, do you think?
It actually makes you appreciate what you have in front of you. Rather than always looking for what you want, what you're striving for. It's right in front of you. You can appreciate the person in front of you. You can appreciate the juicy apple. You can appreciate, right here, all of us here on the camera, the two of us on the camera. You can appreciate things like right now. And I think that's important, because we're always looking towards the future. And that's kind of where anxiety comes in, and people are always looking into the future and not living the moment. When you live in the moment, gratitude is actually really, it's heartwarming. It's helpful. It's just a really great feeling that you have. And I think for most people, because we're living in the future, some in the past, which is not a good thing, but we're always looking in the future. And so those little things don't matter so much, and they should.
I love how you put that, because I think too, for a lot of people, one of the first things that happens is you're waking up and then your face is in social media. And so now you're looking at all these perfect people, or what appears to be perfect things on social media. And now you're at a mental deficit already. But if you take on that gratitude practice first, it might help alleviate or prevent or push away some of those feelings of lack that can happen when this ridiculous social media gets in our brain.
Oh, absolutely. Another trick for that is, when you get up, don't look at your phone for an hour or the computer. Get up, enjoy your morning, have a cup of coffee, glass of water, do your gratitude practice. It's also a time when I actually usually read at that point in the morning. I do my gratitude practice, and then I read for half an hour. Usually something fun, because we're all day long I'm reading stuff for work, so I don't want to read work stuff before I get to work. So I think that's another part of gratitude is appreciating doing your gratitude practice in the morning, and really extending it for as long as you can before you kind of start your day.
I like that a lot. So when you're talking about mental fitness, just to cover a couple of points for people as a takeaway, whenever we talk about fitness, your thoughts are, well, there has to be some steps for fitness, whether it's fitness in exercise and fitness, but for mental fitness, are there some quick steps, or it's really what we're talking about, but can you list it out into a couple of quick things that people should incorporate for some mental fitness?
Well, I'll just mention this quickly, because I know this is something that Robin's going to get into a little bit deeper. Mental fitness, when you think about fitness, you think building muscle, right? Building stamina. And essentially, mental fitness is working your mental fitness brain, working your mind, and working your mind in a way that it's stronger, so you can reframe those negative thoughts in a very simple way. And there's a great book that I have upstairs by Dr. Shirzad Chamine, and it's actually called Positive Intelligence. And so that's really where I would have people start, because it really is that introduction. And then, of course, there are coaches who can help take that next step.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Denise.
You're welcome.
Fun subject, really important subject. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Do I have two?
Oh. So before we head out, let's talk about where, just as a reminder, where people can find you. And I think you have one other thought as well.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
So I just wanted to add one last thought. We're talking about nourishing. How do we nourish ourselves? And obviously here at Discovering Rising Tides, we always want to talk about the outside and the inside. Mm-hmm. And so when it comes to nourishing ourselves, being out in nature is essential for health, happiness, and true joy. And so I just want to make sure that people understand that how important that piece is. Just being outside, getting out in nature, walking on the grass. Like, when was the last time you kicked off your shoes and walked on the grass? And the energy that the earth has is replenishing, is nurturing to us. And so when we want to really take care of ourselves, being out in nature is one of the best ways that we can do that. So I wanted to just mention that, of course.
Definitely. Yeah, it is. And it makes such a difference. Being outside without your shoes on is really, really important.
So, and how can people get in touch with me? You can find me pretty much everywhere on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, under Living Healthy List. And my website is livinghealthylist.com, and you can find me there. All of that information is on the website, how to connect with me through my email and all that stuff. Fun stuff too.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jean.
So this is exciting as we move to our main guest, Robin Decker. Hi, Robin. How are you?
Hi, Jean. I'm good. How are you?
Great. Thank you for being here. I'm very excited about this. And so before you start, let me just read your bio quickly, and then we'll get going. So Robin is a high frequency coach for moms. She's been a seeker of truth, wisdom, and expansion in her whole life. She used to be that stressed out, anxious, tired mom who struggled every day. And after years of doing personal growth and being coached, she's excited to pay it forward. And as a coach, she gets to help moms rewrite their story by letting go of their story. And I really needed to talk to you a few years ago, like a lot of years ago. I think I said that to one of our previous guests, Elise. I have to make sure that you and Elise get connected. Elise is a coach of teenagers and moms. And so we'll connect you too, because networking is the bomb. But so let's talk. So tell me a little bit about let's talk about the stressed out mom and your transition to, lead by example and start to help others.
Absolutely. It's so interesting. So before I had kids, I was teaching yoga. I was a massage therapist, and I really felt like on top of the world. I was just, meditating all the time, and I had no obligation. It was just me, right? And I just felt so good in my body and good in my life. And then I got married. That was a wonderful thing. And then I had my girls, and something happened, some sort of alchemical process that brought up a lot of stuff in me that I was not aware of. And I just went into overwhelm, anxiety. I used to say that my brain was on fire because the stress of being a mom, there were lots of contributing factors to the stress. My husband was overseas. He was in the military. He was gone all the time. I had twins. I had no support system around me. I was a full-time student, and I didn't know how to ask for help. So
could you have added anything else to that package?
Oh my God. I didn't even give you all of it. But anyway, so that, So I
I'm
wanted to
stressed and I'm just listening to it.
with a laundry list of craziness and beautifulness too. Like there was so much love happening there, but I was not equipped. I was not, I read all the books. I read, up to leading into, having them, and you can read all the books, but never be physically, emotionally, mentally, energetically prepared for when they show up. And, I was triggered. I was that triggered mom. And my go-to was overwhelm, anxiety, and depression. And I didn't really acknowledge it because I was such a high achiever too. Let's add that to the list. I was always trying to, I graduated with a 4.0, let's just put it that way, while my husband was deployed, while I was raising them, while I had no support system. So I didn't like the story because I didn't like how I was showing up for my girls, and let alone myself. I didn't even put myself into the equation. It was all about them. And so I remember distinctly saying many, many times, this isn't my story. This is not my story. And I wanted to rewrite that story for me, for them, for our family, because I wanted them to be happy. I wanted them to see me happy, and I wanted to show up for them in a much better way. And so I took myself on. I mean, I had been doing personal growth work for years, but this was like a whole new thing. This was like all of my shadows were coming up. All of these old like things that I didn't even know existed were coming up. And I was like, okay, I get to, this is where I get to grow. I like, that's how I this is where I get to go, and this is where I get to grow. And so I just started asking for help in lots of different areas. And now today, thankfully, my daughters are 12, and I'm now a mental fitness coach. And I actually said yes to coaching several years ago, and that was a huge turning point for me when I got a coach and stayed with her for 3 years. That shifted everything for me because I started giving myself permission to just be my authentic self. There was a lot of shame around, showing up in a way that you're not proud of. And I gave myself permission to forgive myself. That was huge. That was a huge thing. So
Yeah, and I want to just stop for just a second and backtrack a little bit, because I want to acknowledge you for the willingness to be vulnerable, but also bring that concept up, because I know that there's other people that's going to resonate with as well. So if you are, especially if you are an overachiever, or your expectations are excellence, right? And everything that you do, at some point in time, you have to, I'm going to use the word we use with Denise, because I'm really thinking, I love it. You have to reframe your thoughts, because that excellence in achieving and having everything go wonderfully prior to having kids, you can almost put yourself into, and then you toss in some depression, which I am definitely not an expert on, but you're gonna toss in those, in the thoughts of using the word failure could come up, right? And we really have to be careful that it's not a situation of failure. It's a situation of vulnerability and needing to ask for help. And how hard was that to actually express your vulnerability, to say, I need some help here?
Oh man, I still am learning how to ask for help. And actually, so here's the difference that there's this thing that even when you ask for help, can you actually receive it? That there's some people who really
I did gave me shivers down my back.
You gotta let it in, right? And I think that was a huge, I've only learned how to do that in the last couple of years, Jean, to be quite honest with you. I was asking for help, but there was a little bit of like, there was still a little bit of shame. There was some resentment going on. Like I just really wanted to be healthy and happy. I kept thinking, there was a story, right? Of what's wrong with me? Why am I unhappy? Why am I looking at life this way? And that's a very disempowering question to ask. Why why am I like, or why is life? That's so even reframing how you ask the question shifts everything for you. How can I receive this support? How can I be better for myself and my children? What is possible for me here if I let go of the story that I'm a bad mom. Like, it's even that simple reframe shifts the energy inside of you. And earlier, Denise, you asked Denise, well, what does gratitude do for you, really?
Mhm.
Everything, every thought form has an energy, as a resonance to it.
Mm.
And so shifting your words, shifting the story, saying thank you. There's a study done with water. A Japanese scientist, he took water and put words on the water, and then froze the crystals and put them under a microscope, and saw that words like war and hate and anger didn't even create beautiful formed crystals, but things
Mm.
like the word thank you, love, peace, joy, happiness created these gorgeous crystals. So everything is energy, and our words are super powerful, and the story that we're believing affects your energy and everything around you. So
Mm.
yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. And so if you trying to put this into a sentence, so the intro. So what's really surprises me, and I think that this is going to touch on some people too. So we talk about your background when you started, and your yogic background, and your meditation practice, and all of these things that are practices of receiving. Right. So you're in a yogic practice and you're receiving breath, and you're yoking your breath to your movement, and you're doing all of these things, and your meditative is you're bringing in and receiving thoughts. But for you to be able to say, even through that it was difficult to receive the help that's really profound. That's quite a realization, isn't it?
Yeah, and it goes to show you that there are these thought processes, these subconscious things, these patterns and beliefs that are running in the background that you're not aware of, but you feel, you feel like, I think you were earlier talking about, how do you know when you're a negative story? Your body tells you. You feel it. You feel the contraction. You feel closed off. You feel lower energy. You feel foggy, like you're not clear, right? And so your body is the barometer of, what am I actually believing right now? If you feel like, if you're leaning in, if you're excited, if you're curious, if you're open, right? You're in a really good, positive frame of mind. And if you're not, if you're shut down, you can see by someone's body language what's really going on with them. And so,
and how your digestive system is.
Oh, that's huge. That's a huge one. In the gut. Oh yeah, for sure.
The gut rules all. It rules all.
Definitely.
So I can see where your experiences have really given you an incredible foundation of being able to teach, but I think mostly to be able to understand and interpret what people are telling you, but also what your clients are not telling you as well, to be that interpreter of, here's what I see, here's what I'm hearing from you, but I think that it's somewhere in between.
Yeah. So whenever I'm working with anybody, I work with moms for the most part, I've become really good to, I've become attuned to paying attention to their energy. And I've really learned how to ask deep questions that get to the root of what's really happening. And oftentimes, probably most of the time in most sessions, I will hear a mom say to me, "How did you know to ask that question?" It's just because me too. Like I've been there, I've felt it. Not exactly the same story, but we have these similar patterns in this motherhood journey, and I get it because it matters to me, and I love uncovering the hidden. I've always been curious to understand how we work as human beings, how the connection works in relationships, what's going on in our mind, and what's operating behind the scenes, and like really bringing it out into the light. And once you see it, once you can actually, claim it, and I think that's important, we get to claim all of it. We can't push anything away, because whatever we resist obviously persists, right? So if we can just claim it and say, okay, I witness this, I honor this, this is what's happening, and then just like make it not okay, but normalize it. It's like, this happens to a lot of us. So let's, as Denise said, let's reframe it. Like, what story am I believing?
Mhm.
And is this the story that I truly wish to embody? And how can I reframe it? And how can I actually move into a new story? Because it really does, like, we can have all the insight and wisdom in the world, but unless you actually embody it and move into that new way of being, you're going to keep on repeating the same old story again and again and again. So
I really like that, because you're not pushing your story away and saying this was a bad story, because
yeah,
that story is a chapter
yeah,
in your life book that you have to acknowledge, accept, digest, and learn and build on. So as you're going through your personal journey and you're talking with coaches and you're figuring out through that 3-year process of being, like, I love the fact that you had a coach for 3 years, because there's that consistency of
yeah.
growth that you both can see. How did you know that you were ready to help people, or how were you called to that?
I totally resisted it. I did not. I was like, this is
That's
not
the
for
best
me.
kind. That means you're
No,
really
seriously,
supposed to be there.
my coach was like, you need to be a coach. And I said, no, no, this is not for me. And I resisted her for almost a year, until finally she said, I'm just going to give you your first client. Just, I have somebody, she's perfect for you. And so that started the journey. And then as soon as I started it, I thought I just love seeing other moms go, oh, I get it. I can kind of free myself. I don't have to beat myself up for being an imperfect human. I'm just a human being doing the best that I can. I know my heart. I know what I desire. And now I get to do better. And like seeing that light bulb moment go on where they give themselves, full permission to just be themselves
Mhm.
and forgive themselves. And okay, so how do I change this? How do I shift this? How do I write my new story? Because I'm ready to let go of the old one. It just doesn't fit anymore. It's like, you're wearing a suit and it just doesn't fit anymore. It's like, thank you, suit. I appreciate you. I need a new suit.
Mhm. I love that. That's a great analogy. That is a really great analogy, because it served you, and
Yeah.
now your fashion has changed.
Whatever's changed, it's time for the new clothing. It's time for the new way of being. It's time to step into a new mindset. Energetically, you're different. Everything, we're always changing. But unless we really embody it on all of our levels, because we have to be aligned, on the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, inner and outer. And that's like, inner alignment with outer alignment. That's also really important to embody. And once you get that alignment and you really just honor who you're becoming, it becomes much more much easier. And there's lots of different tools, lots of different things you can do to get that embodiment piece. And the positive intelligence mindset, mental fitness coaching is a game changer for a lot of people. That really shifted how I coach, how I coach myself, how I'm showing up as a mom. I mean, it's a beautiful, beautiful operating system that is so simple and so easily accessible.
Mhm.
When people go through the coaching program, it's like the foundational program is like 6 weeks. It's a game changer. It changes everything.
I want to talk about that in depth, but I want to go back and ask a question. You used
Yeah.
you used a term, and I think it needs a little bit deeper dive. So you said disempowering.
Mm.
Can we talk about that for just a second? Because I think that needs to be broken out a little bit. So because there's maybe some tricks that people can recognize, or what's a little talk about it, please.
Okay. So yeah, so I brought it up in the context of the questions that we ask. When we are stuck in a story that is triggering to us, right? I'll bring up my kids. When I'm in a story around my kids and how they're doing in school, for instance, okay, they're not necessarily doing really well, or something's happening, and I'm in a story of, well, why is my daughter not applying herself? Or because I know what her potential is. I know she's intelligent, right? Why is she, not showing up in that way? That's not an empowering question for me as a mom or for her. work. So I went to her and said, why are you not, X, Y, or Z? That she'd get that deer in the headlights look. It's not an empowering way to open up a conversation and to have a shift happen. So we lose power, right? Both of us actually lose power energetically. Our connection weakens. It just all around leaks energy, right? It's an energy leaking kind of question or way of being. So when you shift the language and you shift to a more empowering question, like, honey, I see that, your grades are a certain way. What I want to know is, is something going on with you? Do I need to support you? And how can I support you? Or, just something that actually opens up possibility as opposed to feeling victimized by a low grade or, a bad outcome. Is that kind of like the direction? Is that making more sense?
Yeah, no, that's totally. And I know I've done that multiple times. And it's easy to do. That's your first reflex, but I didn't realize that how disempowering that was, not only to the child, but to yourself as well.
Yeah.
And so can you say again a better way to frame that? I know you just did, but I just want to emphasize that again. So what's a better way to frame that type of a question?
Yeah. So instead of why are you failing this class, or why didn't you do better on that test? I mean, just think of, like, take a moment. I'm just going to say it to you, Jean, and I want you to feel it. Like, why did you not do well on that test? Even if you said it in a positive way, does that even, like, there's no coming back from that, because already you feel judged. There's judgment going on, right? There's like, well, she's already made up her mind. There's no thought of, well, you don't even realize, like, I maybe was feeling sick that day, or maybe my friend told me she didn't want to hang out with me. There's so many factors, right? Because our focus is so narrow in the moment. When you go why, it's like, something's wrong here. But instead of that, if you shift to, honey, I noticed that your grade isn't as high as maybe you might have even wanted it. Can you tell me, was anything going on that day that maybe contributed to not doing well on your test? Did something happen at school? Or, because I know you're so great, you're intelligent, and you love this class, and yeah, share with me what's happening. And then, like, she already feels much more relaxed. Doesn't that feel different in your body, even when I say it?
Yeah, and you're giving space for the answer.
Yeah, there's a possibility there.
Something interesting that Elise had talked about before that I honestly didn't realize, that kids' brains don't fully develop until they're 25, and their ability to think outside of the situation that they're currently in is really difficult for them to think about other things. But what made me, when you were giving that example, I'm actually thinking that the adult is in that mindset, because all the adult is focusing on is that particular thing and not thinking about everything else that can be going on. So almost like we've got this kid's mindset about, you didn't do well on this test, you didn't do well in school today, but not allowing space for conversation for those other things.
Yeah. And I mean, think about it, all she's hearing is, all my mom cares about is the result, not me.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you for this. This is a really important conversation for people to hear. And so going back to the coaching part, what made you raise your hand to say, I need help? Or what do you hear from the clients that you're helping that says, this is when, are you feeling this? Maybe you need to talk to somebody.
Well, I like I'm gonna speak to your first question. What made me reach out and ask for help? I was basically kind of at a point, Jean, where I was feeling pretty down about myself, and the depression had definitely taken over. I was eating very poorly. I was actually drinking. I don't actually drink very much anymore, hardly at all. I was drinking every single day by myself, bad sign. And I was in this story of, I'm doing harm to my kids, and there's no coming back. I was in a really dark place. And my coach reached out to me. She and I were in a conscious parenting group together. She reached out to me, and I can't exactly remember what she said, but I needed that lifeline. I needed to be seen, and I needed somebody to offer that help because I didn't know how to give it to myself.
Mhm.
And so there was a moment where I was like, okay, this is a choice point. This is a huge fork in the road for me to change my life. I've got to take this. And I'm so glad that I did, because everything, the whole trajectory of my life shifted from that point on into a much more positive direction. We've had these moments in our lives where, everything shifted for us, these really kind of seminal moments. That was one of them. Me saying yes to receiving that support, uh, just, yeah, it shifted my entire life in a much more positive way.
And the bravery around making that decision is important to acknowledge.
For sure. Thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
And so your clients, what are you hearing from them? What are they saying, or what are you hearing that's important?
A lot of similar things that I went through. It's just, there's a lot of shame around, how they showed up in the past. They're tired of being tired. They're tired of putting their needs last and not being able to care for themselves. There's a lot more awareness around coaching now, and self-care and transformation and healing. It's much more out there in the world, right? So women are really, moms are really catching on. It's like, oh, I need to do self-care. Well, what does that look like? It's not just like going to the nail salon or getting my hair done or getting a massage. Those are all wonderful things, but true self-care, truly nourishing things that shift you on a fundamental level, that to me is what self-care is. And so women are finally raising their hand and saying, you know what, I need this. I need to do this. I love my kids and I want them to be happy, but I get to also have my needs met too, because if I show up, fulfilled and with my cup full, I'm a much better mom. My kids actually like being around me now, and really want to participate and contribute, and our connection is stronger. And they're also, I'm modeling that for them. They're seeing, they're able to notice when they're feeling bad and like, oh mom, I kind of need help here. So it becomes this beautiful exploration for your kids and for you into what is the next sort of, I guess, paradigm, or I love that word, paradigm of parent-child relationship. And it's much more open. We talk about things on a much higher level. And yeah, so I think that's, it's they're tired of being overwhelmed. They're tired of feeling bad about how they showed up. They really just want to be included in the mix, and they're saying yes to the help. They're learning how to receive it.
How fortunate it is that it can be part of a conversation, because 25, 30 years ago when my kids were growing up, that it wasn't a topic of conversation, or it was more looked at as, I need to talk to a psychiatrist because I'm failing, right? So now we're breaking it down to something that's more comfortable and more accepted.
It's accessible. Yeah, for sure.
That's a good word, accessible too. But it's also okay.
Yeah.
That's the most important part, that it's okay, that you don't have to feel shame about saying, I'm asking for help, or I need to talk with somebody. It's you can be proud of it and honor that within yourself. Absolutely. And your family. So let's talk a little bit, go back to the mindset part. I keep switching our conversations because I don't want to miss anything. And so let's talk about the mindset process and walk us through that and why that's important.
Yeah. So I've been doing mindset work for years, but I really love positive intelligence because of the simplicity of it, the accessibility of it. So it really the positive intelligence is based on being able to build up your mental muscle of self-command, of noticing when you're triggered in the moment, being able to pause and not go into your normal patterned ways of reacting, and really building up the part of your brain that is aligned with compassion, creativity, joy, connection, all of the parts of your brain that are really Shirzad, who is the author of Positive Intelligence, he called it the sage mind. I like to call it my Jedi mind, because I grew up in the age of Star Wars. So it's my Jedi mind of, I can see Princess Leia and Luke, and just like getting to that calm, still place where you have access to infinite possibilities on how we can create a beautiful way forward, instead of disconnection and going to the part of your brain that is survival mode. When you go to the part of your brain that is opposite of sage, you're going into fight, flight, freeze. You're going into the sympathetic nervous system. You're going into the subconscious patterned ways of belief to survive. And that doesn't create connection, right? That creates the opposite of connection. And so when you know how to shift and pause in the moment very quickly, or if you do have a negative interaction with anybody, with yourself, with your child, with your spouse, with someone out in public, you quickly shift out of it. You don't stay stuck in it and go, oh, that person, that's this is what happened and I'm such a victim, or blah blah, whatever negative story is going on. You shift and you own your response, and you go, how can I look at this differently? What is actually a gift in this interaction? How can I make this a positive thing instead of a negative thing? Because there are so many things outside of our control. We can't control what others do. We can't control the weather. We can't control our child. We can only control how we respond to it. And when we do that, the energy shift has a ripple effect, not just for us, but for the person that's in front of you. Or just, when you were talking about, oh, I can look forward to the weather on Saturday. It's raining today, so how can I make the best of the rain? How can I, shift that? And, the easiest way to do it is in the moment, get into your body somehow, focus on your breathing, take a moment to pick something up and like really look at it and like touch it. When you get into your senses, you're getting into your body and you're dropping out of this, mind machine, which can be wonderful, but can also be really negative. So
sure. Yeah. And it'll engage that parasympathetic piece.
Yes.
And so you used an interesting word. And I think as parents, we think that this word is supposed to rule ourselves. It's control. We are supposed to be in control of our children. We're supposed to be in control of our finances. We're in control of our household. And when you are in a situation that isn't going well, or that feels uncomfortable, that feeling of not being in control can kind of come up like a red flag, or it's standing in the way of allowing. You have to move that aside and understand that you might actually have more control if you allow more of a conversation.
100%. I mean, it's like anything, right? Everything's on a spectrum. There's healthy control, positive control, and then there's detrimental, negative, over control, right? Can you find somewhere in the middle where everybody has a place to step in the ring together and offer themselves authentically and creatively in a way that, okay, so like there's a really beautiful game that you can play. It's called a power game. So if you guys cannot come together on an idea, say your child wants something, but you're not 100% aligned with that, right? So instead of just shutting your child down and say, no, that's not going to work for me, you kind of say, what I like about that is this, and then you shift and you add something that maybe they can consider adding to, and then they go, well, yeah, okay, what I like about this is this, and so you get to that place where you're playing a creative game of how can we come together instead of just butting heads and say, I'm stuck on this position, I'm stuck on this position, and like we're just going to sit over here and cross our arms, and we all know the scene with our kid, right? And so can you instead of controlling the outcome, be open to their ideas and then just invite them into it. Keep inviting them in. And then they're going to invite you in more and more too.
And then you're also teaching them how conversations can help satisfy or rectify a difficult situation.
Definitely.
And so let's shift a little bit here and let's talk about the outdoors, and how does that come into play for you through your process of going through the struggles and the growth that happened for you, and how does that incorporate with your clients?
Oh God, I was wondering when we're going to get to this.
I know we were so stuck. There was so much going on. We need like 4 hours.
I'm so sorry. Yeah, I know.
No, I'm really good. This is phenomenal. So yeah.
So being outside for me is medicine. You and I talked a little bit about this. I love the water. I've been, it's interesting. I am not a water sign, and I don't necessarily go by signs, but for the last 3 years, since the beginning of, everything crazy hitting the fan on the world stage, I've been listening to the water. And I know that sounds a little weird, but for some reason I felt this call and inside of me to pay attention to the water. So water has consciousness. And, as human beings, our physical beings are a lot of it is water. Our blood is like over 90% water. Our bodies are over 70% water. And it just kept on, speaking to me. And so when I am outside, when I go for a walk, especially on the beach, or by a river, on a hike, there's something that happens to me physiologically that then allows, it's sort of like a domino effect. My body unwinds, and then my mind unwinds, and then my emotions follow. And energetically, I just start to tap into a resource inside of me that is infinite. It's really hard for me to even articulate what happens, because I've been doing this now for so long that it's like I gain access to myself beyond myself. It's the part of me that is connected to the universe, to everything. And so when I go outside and really just let everything go, I am able to access creativity and presence, and health and vitality, like I can't anywhere else. I work from home. I work in front of a computer. This is how I mostly connect with people. And it's sort of, very one-dimensional. When you get outside, you feel things like in a whole new way. And it's very powerful and meaningful and poetic to me. And so I always encourage my clients to go wherever it feels good to go out in nature and just listen to the birds, listen to the wind. It's like a song. It's like a universal song of healing. And when you open yourself up to it, it's pretty magical. So yeah.
It is. And the water speaks to me as well too. That's part of what's important. And so I'm away from a lot of the water, but now I depend upon the trees and the mountains. And it is just the fact of being outside. But I love how you articulated the importance of that, because you have to hit the reset button, and you have to really it helps put things into perspective.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too is, and Denise said this, the earth is very nurturing. It's also a really willing participant to offload all of your stuff into the earth. Because if you think about it, right, when, if you go through the cycle of life from birth to death, when our bodies, go and they get recycled into the earth, it's repurposed. Like the energy is just, is so available to us. When you plant your feet on the ground, it's powerful. Like if you really tune in and feel it, you can almost hear the earth saying, yeah, I got you. It's this give and take, relationship. And I love the earth too. I'm a huge proponent of really connecting to the nature inside of you, because nature is inside of us. We are that. We are all that. But our mind and our story gets in the way. We think we're just our identity and our, all of this, and that's almost like the least of who we are. It's infinite. Our nature is super infinite, and when you tap into it, life becomes much more available to you to support you and move you in the directions that you really desire to go. So it's powerful.
I love that. That's a great place to put a pin in that. That's just a great statement. So how can people find you?
So I'm on social media. I'm on Facebook and Instagram. You can find me at Robin Gonzalez Decker, but also robindeckercoach.com is the website. And you can also find all my social media stuff on my website. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Robin. This has been a phenomenal conversation, and I
Yay.
really appreciate this. And we should probably get back together and dive more into some of these other areas. I know that it can be helpful for other people. So in the future, we'll circle back and take another look too. But thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.